Maybe you're going to have a job in retail, or you're just simply curious of what it could be like working in retail. So that is what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, I have actually just lost my job in retail, but just to let you guys know, it was nothing out of a fault of my own. It was just because of health issues. I actually just physically and mentally could not do the job that I was doing. So yes, I have actually worked in retail. I'm not just making this video because why not? And yes, I no longer have that job that I'm talking about, but I didn't do anything wrong. just clearing my name. And also I do just want to quickly say that I will not be mentioning the company in which I worked for, and nor is this video going to be slating that particular company. And of course, every job has its negatives and its positives. So I think the first thing that we need to mention, which is probably one of the most obvious ones in terms of working in retail, is customers and how rude they can be, how unnecessarily rude they can be as well. I knew that people could be rude, but working in retail really sort of opened my eyes to just how disrespectful people can be. And the thing is, not just the customers either. Sometimes other colleagues can be difficult to work with as well. And obviously, you are not going to get along with everybody, and that's completely fine. But I think when you're at work, you do need to be respectful and mindful of others and really just look out for each other in a way. I mean, the worst shifts of mine that I ever had by far was every Saturday nights. My shifts always ended at 10 o'clock at night, and finishing and working until that time really sometimes made me feel really unsafe. The area of which that I work in England, is known to be a very rundown area, shall we say. It's definitely not the safest of areas or the nicest of areas, and I will be the first person to ever say that. But yeah, society is very unpredictable, and to be honest with you guys, I have all kinds of weird, horrible, and sometimes funny stories under my belt to tell you guys. And I think to work in retail, you do have to be a strong person, not just physically, but also mentally. You need to be able to cope with sometimes having some really disgusting, unnecessary, and just horrible things said to you. So definitely, customer service is probably like the number one thing that you have to do working in retail. But a lot of complaints within working in retail and working with the customers is that they can just be so rude. The wage itself usually isn't too great either. Normally you sit just above the minimum pay, and so yeah, the pay is not fantastic for the amount of crap you can sometimes put up with. And there isn't many available hours either, and I found, in my experience anyways, there wasn't much flexibility there for me. However, I'm sure there are people who work in retail who are very, very flexible, and they can change shifts or do overtime or whatever that they need to do. They can do it with ease and quite quickly. But in my experience, there just wasn't the flexibility there. There wasn't many hours available. And so, yeah, I asked repeatedly about moving hours and not finishing very late at night, but there wasn't anything else for me. So yeah, the wage is not fabulous, and the hours aren't really there either. Not many people, I think, nowadays are getting full-time contracts in retail. Often you get like a 16-hour, a 12-hour, or even 0-hour contracts, and 0-hour contracts are horrendous, and they are so common here in the UK right now, and I just think they're horrible. But people take them because they need the hours, they need the work, they need the pay. So that's something that you possibly may want to take into consideration. Unfair treatment as well. People push you to see how far they can go with you before you snap or before you retaliate in some way. And I guess this kind of links in with the attitudes of the customers and some colleagues that you might get. Those are definitely linked. And it's true, you know, people, I think I think companies nowadays, they think that they can treat you however they want to treat you, and that's not me saying that my experience working for the particular company that I worked for is, you know, was horrible or anything like that, but you could see sometimes they were trying to do things quite crafty and they think that I wouldn't realize, you know. So have your wits about you and always make sure that what your company is doing, regardless of whether you work in retail or some other industry, know that they are doing things right and know that they are doing things by the books, because I personally caught my company out before, and yeah, sometimes they do think they can get away with anything, and you have to prove that they can't get away with doing stuff that they're technically not allowed to do. I think working in retail in a small shop with lots of food in it, like I did, it did not help me at all in terms of just my eating habits. I would always get kind of distracted and brought in by all of the food and drink on offer, and you know, I wanted to buy things. And the thing is, some things that I was getting like packs of donuts for like a penny. So the discount in that respect is very good. However, if you look at it in another way, it's kind of bad because it encourages you to perhaps buy donuts and unhealthy foods, because it was very, very rare that healthy foods would be left over at the end of the night to be reduced to a penny. So yeah, I mean, it does challenge your eating habits, or it challenged mine anyways. And I think another thing for me was the work, in my opinion anyway, very quickly became repetitive. Although it's usually a very, very fast paced environment and each day is different regarding customers, really my actual work was incredibly mundane and I got very bored of it very quickly. There were times where I did love the job that I did, don't get me wrong, but very often I was stuck on the tills serving people all of my shift. And of course, you know, being on the tills serving customers is part of my job, I understand that. But when you are stuck on the till constantly, I just felt like I wasn't learning much of what was actually going on the shop floor itself. I just kind of knew the till area. So I really would have liked something else, a bit more of a mixture of what I was doing in my role. And another thing I would definitely say is that it is a hard job, and I don't think a lot of people realise just how hard retail can actually be. Heavy lifting, of course, is a big part of it. Standing around a lot, you're always on your feet pretty much, being up and down, putting stock on the shelves. And I didn't realise how much heavy lifting would be involved until I started to work in retail. And obviously, you know, you're not going to be lifting heavy things if you're going to work in clothing, for example. But for me, it was constantly lifting really heavy things like massive crates of alcohol, massive crates of big bottles of fizzy pop. And yeah, it was very hard and very difficult, and just lugging things around was just such a problem for me. So yeah, hats off to anyone who has worked in retail for a long time, because it's definitely a harder job than what I realised it was anyway. One of the biggest problems I think here in the UK, and I've mentioned it for, oh gosh, a couple of times now in different videos, but we're all about cost cutting right now, and we are cutting a lot of our valuable services to the bone, like the NHS, like the police force, and unfortunately retail is no different. So quite often I was in with a couple of people, and really I would have liked more of us to be in. You know, quite often I was running shifts one on one, which meant it was just me and another colleague of mine, which again is an incredibly stressful shift. And late at night, especially when there's a lot of drunks, there's a lot of trouble going on, because we would have a lot of issues with gangs of kids and things like that. You know, it does make you feel a lot more unsafe because you're like, oh my gosh, if something happens, there's only me and this other colleague. And especially if it's only yourself on the shop floor as well, just serving people at the tills, it can get a little bit freaky and a little bit scary maybe. So yeah, the cost cutting side of retail is ridiculous, and I feel like it surprises me that not more colleagues who work in retail are badly injured or murdered or anything like that because of the cost cuttings. It is getting so bad. And my schedule, along with, you know, starting retail work, was crazy. I slept at crazy times. My sleeping schedule was all weird. My eating schedule was all weird. And everything was just kind of crazy. There was not my typical routine there anymore, which to some people it might not be a big issue, but for me it really was. A lot of the times I wasn't getting any sleep, and yeah, it just messed everything up. But honestly, there are some positives to retail, and yeah, there was a lot of horrible times, but there were some shifts where I just really enjoyed what I did, and you would serve some lovely people. So I'm very glad that I worked in retail and I really tried it out. Is it for me? Probably not. But if I had to take a retail job again, of course you got to do what you got to do sometimes, and you don't always have the option of being picky or having a choice of what you do. Sometimes you just kind of get thrown into it. So if you are in the retail industry, let me know your thoughts and experiences of it in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave this video a big thumbs up. If you're new here, click on that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. And of course, if you guys want to hear some of those crazy, weird, horrible stories that I have now from working in retail, let me know in the comments section. Thank you guys, and I hope to see you in my next video.